My guest today is cellist and composer Katie Troy. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your musical background and how'd you get into composing?
Well, I've been playing the cello for about 19 years now, and it's always been a big part of my life since then. I did a little dabbling in composition in my undergrad at Southern Virginia University, taking some intro to composition classes, kind of exploring that area of music making. But I didn't do much of it until my doctorate in musical performance, doctorate of musical arts in cello performance. And I had to choose a minor. So I thought I'd like to do a little more with composition. So I chose composition as my doctoral minor, studied with Mara Gibson at LSU for my composition. And then I graduated, and that was that. I wanted to do a little more with composition, but that kind of went by the wayside. I've been now I teach at Valdosta State University. I teach at the cello department there, and I play in a lot of regional orchestras.
Very cool. So, what made you curious to dabble in composing?
At the school that I was at for my undergrad, there weren't a ton of music classes because it was a liberal arts school, so a lot of big picture things. So I just took any music classes that I could. And I took intro to composition just to see what it was all about. And I realized that it was actually doable. It was actually fun. I was a little scared about it at first because as string players, we don't often get that experience of composing for yourself or for others.
And so, what demystified it for you?
Just doing it, really. Like the
Yeah.
first assignment that we had was just to create something. And I really like hippos. And so I decided to write a little piece about hippos. It was a cello and tuba duet. And I just had fun with it. And I just made it happen, got some feedback from the teacher about, more repetition or things like that. And then it was really fun to perform it. People loved hearing it. They had us play it around different parts of the school in different concerts. And then that made me realize, oh, maybe I could compose. I can think of musical ideas and bring them to life.
Awesome. I love that. I hope that more string players have that opportunity. So, as you went from Southern Virginia and then to Louisiana State, and your composing ambitions kind of grew, what did you want to achieve with composing after you graduated from LSU, and what was kind of the frustration that you had in making that happen?
I wanted to just keep composition as part of my life. Like I wanted to still write things that I could play, that others could play, things that could be performed, and just feel like I could identify as being a composer as well as a performer. But I sometimes felt like I didn't have direction with that. I didn't know where to start or what to work towards, how to collaborate with other people. Even though I know so many performers, it's hard to approach things from the composer side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, as a composer, yes, this totally makes sense. It can be
Yeah.
scary for sure. And so like some of the scariness about approaching performers, some of this uncertainty about, where to start. What would it have meant for you that you could identify as a composer? Like what would it mean for your composing that you could be like, yes, I am a composer and I know how to reach out to players.
It would help me find the motivation to still write because if I'm just writing for myself or like if I'm not planning to perform anything or have anyone else play my music, I'm so busy that it's really hard to make that time for writing music. So to identify myself like I'm a composer, I can write music that's going to be performed and people will hopefully enjoy it and take something from it, then that helps me find the time, the energy to put into my composition.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So obviously at some point in your composing journey, we connected and you joined the Artistic Growth Incubator, which is part of the Wizarding School for Composers. What were some of the things that you learned in the program and how did they help you with your composing?
I think right off the bat, just helping, we talked about brainstorming and starting your piece and taking small bits at a time was a big part of just the beginning of that process because I often felt like I had to just sit down, write a piece, make it perfect right away. I'd get stuck in the details and just like be really slow at making progress. But with the wizarding school, when you talked about things like creating sketches, making a lot of sketches sometimes, if I got stuck on what I was brainstorming, I think there was one time you had me write like 10 different short sketches on different silly themes or ideas or whatever I had, and things like that really helped just get me into it because as a perfectionist sometimes it's just like I don't want to touch that. I'm not feeling up to it. I'm not feeling creative enough or motivated enough for that big thing that I want to accomplish, but having those little things really made a difference for me.
I love that. I love that. What other frameworks did you find yourself using that helped you, get to where you wanted to be as a composer?
There was little like, I mean, having assignments as well as part of the wizarding school where we focused on different frameworks was helpful. I remember things having to do with textures, like different musical textures, having cheat sheets to help break it down and visually see, like, oh, these are some different musical textures I can explore. These are some different ideas of how to vary my composition or things like that were just really helpful in helping me figure out what to do next or how to improve my piece.
Yeah. Well, and I think a question that many people would be interested in, I know for me as well, the experience that I had in university is that you learn a lot of stuff in university. You have some really fabulous teachers. I mean, Mara Gibson's an excellent teacher. But just the nature of being in a university kind of like skews you, like the university has like incentives to like teach about certain things and point you in a particular direction. What were the kinds of things that you discovered outside of the university in the Wizarding School? What was it about this experience that was different for you?
There was a lot more concrete, actionable things that were introduced. Like, for example, just learning about like the process, the whole process of, I think it was something about the sketching and the composing and the editing and the shipping. There's like a cycle that you had or something like that. And learning about parts in each version or each, what's the word, each section of the cycle, each step of the cycle, and learning about the whole process rather than just, okay, like if you have a 30-minute lesson every week, you write stuff during the week and then you show them and then they comment on that stuff, which is great. They give you great ideas. And then you go back and continue working and then you show them again. But it felt more like the rest of the process was up to me and the music itself was the product. But in the wizarding school, the whole process was talked about. Part of the assignments dealt with the sketching process and the like getting your music out there process and all of that kind of extra stuff that you don't get a chance to always explore in the university.
I love that. And so I'm curious, like, what was the result of this? So, like, what did you end up writing and what did you end up learning as a result of your participation?
I was able to get some opportunities that I probably wouldn't have sought out on my own or haven't thought to seek out on my own. One was at Concordia University. I know the cello professor there, Dr. Edward Telegorov, and he asked if I would, or I approached him actually and asked if he would be interested in working together to have me write a piece for his orchestra there. It was the non-auditioned college orchestra, and he was really excited about it. And so we collaborated a little bit, talked about some ideas, and I wrote a piece that was premiered at Concordia University. And that was really exciting for me because I wouldn't have, probably without the wizarding school, I wouldn't have thought, oh, let me reach out to Edward and see if he wants me to write a piece for him. But it was surprisingly easy to get going, and it was a really fun process with that. So that was one thing that was really fun. Another was, as part of the, we had a collaboration with Gloria Lum where we all got to write solo cello pieces, which is my thing, especially because I'm a cellist. And so when I wrote my Alligator Alley piece, you had a few meetings with me, helping me figure out like all the cellists I know, and writing down a list and having their emails and sending, like drafting an email to send to them to, try and get my music out there, which also I wouldn't have done on my own. I would
Mhm.
have just been like, yep, this is great. This is my piece that I wrote. But because of that, I was able to get it out more than I would have expected. I had people purchasing my music from me, and Alligator Alley is still a big part of my life. I have actually Edward, who I was talking about at Concordia, still performs it as encores and for his different performances that he goes out on. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I find it so gratifying to see that this has been the result. And I think for me, part of it is that like you just write really fun music, you know? Like not only is it like you're a performer and you know how to write things that are gratifying for performers, but like you have this like quirky sense of fun with like hippos and alligators and other such things. And it's like, well, who wouldn't want to play this, right?
Well, thank you. It is fun.
I'm curious. So these are some of the outcomes, and I think it's so cool that you've achieved these. Tell me more about the things that you learned. What did you learn about yourself and your composing over the last year?
I learned that a big thing, I already kind of talked about this, but I learned that being a perfectionist is not always the most helpful thing with composing. Just doing it is a big part of everything. Because I've learned a lot about theory and different compositional techniques and all of that throughout my education, but the application sometimes it got stuck on me. And so through the wizarding school, it's really focused on doing things and doing different things than you might not, like things that you might not already be doing, or things that are maybe a little out of your comfort zone, or things that will help you make connections. And so that's been really helpful for sure.
It's awesome. So that's where you've been. What are you working on now?
I'm actually, this week I've been working quite a lot on a piece for the South Georgia String Project. They're currently at ASTA, the American String Teachers Association conference this week, accepting an award for their program. But through or I keep saying Southern Virginia, through Valdosta State University, I like they're kind of connected with the South Georgia Strings Project, and they asked if I'd be interested in composing a piece that was good for their advanced students, their intermediate students, and their beginning students, kind of like a big combined piece. And so what I've been doing is I took my piece that I wrote for Concordia University for their non-auditioned group, and I've kind of compacted it a little bit, and I've been arranging it so that each part has like an advanced violin, intermediate violin, and a beginner, and each of them are kind of the same part, just like simplified as you go down. And it's been really exciting, and they're planning on, they said they'd like to have that performed in May, so I'm looking forward to that. And then there's a few VSU professors who have also talked about wanting to play some of my works, my English horn and piano composition that was published through Trevco Music. And yeah, there's a lot of things that I actually have hopefully on the horizon that I'm looking forward to.
That's awesome. Well, let's, I mean, you just threw this thing out there. Let's circle it on that. You got your English horn and piano piece published through Trevco Music. Like getting a piece published, was that something that, after you graduated, you would have expected to have happened?
No, I would not have.
Yeah, tell us more about that. What was that like? How did that happen that you were able to get an English horn and piano piece published?
Well, it was through the Wizarding School. We were having a workshop, like a collaboration with an oboe and English horn studio. I forgot the name of the head of the studio.
Yeah, Janet Ingle, but yeah.
Yes. And we were assigned an oboist or English horn player. We could collaborate with them to kind of talk about what they would like to play, what their level is. And I created a piece with one of the English horn players called Runaway Llama Train. That was really fun. She talked about how she loved quirky music, kind of fun, jazzy blues influence sometimes, things like that. And I talked about how I liked to write quirky music, so it seemed like a good match. And we created a really fun piece for English horn and piano. And then through that, I think you and well, somehow you got some of those pieces presented to Trevco. I forgot how that process worked.
Yeah, so the double reed community is like many of like the subcultures in music, right? Like I'm assuming that you know many of the cellists around the United States and like all of the double reed players, a lot of them know each other. And so Janet knew the head of Trevco Music and suggested that we reach out to him with, some of these different pieces that we had.
Mm. Yes. And so as I showed him my music and exchanged emails, he said, "This is great. I love it. Let's get it published." And so then that just started the whole thing with the publishing, and now it's published, and I've got a copy of it printed in my music library that they sent to me.
It's awesome. I love that. So we're about to wrap up here. I'm just curious. So you've had all these awesome experiences, and it's been really gratifying and really cool for me to see how you've grown as a composer, both in the outcomes in your music and in your confidence in your creativity. So congratulations and kudos to you for all of your growth.
Thank you.
I'm curious, who would you recommend the Wizarding School to?
Really, anyone who's wanting to make composition a part of their life, composers, like early career composers, a lot of people that were like later in life, they'd done other things for their work, but they wanted to spend more time on composition, were my fellow members, and they seemed to get a lot out of it. I think as long as you've got like some kind of background in composition or like writing, reading music, knowing the basics of all of that, I feel like it can be helpful for high level composers, for people who are starting out, because you have so much knowledge that you can offer a lot through your like personal feedback, through the things that you teach, through the opportunities that you help create. So I'd recommend it to pretty much all the composers out there that want to keep writing music that people enjoy listening to.
Awesome. Well, and as you know, like that is a major part of what I do in the program is that my aim is to help composers who want to write music that gives people goosebumps, takes their breath away, and gets stuck in their head. And I show people how to use the proven like science for music cognition to make that happen. And I think that that's another thing I think is just cool about what we do is that it's
Yeah,
not a guessing game.
yeah, exactly. Because that's actually a big part of why I really enjoyed the Wizarding School, is because I want to write music that is going to help people feel something, or something that people will enjoy, that will help them react to something. And we don't always talk about that when we get into the super contemporary stuff and the super experimental stuff that you learn about in universities and all of that. So that was always really helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know about you, but I mean, I love a lot of like the contemporary stuff. A lot of stuff's really cool.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just like anything in university. You only have so much time to focus on things. So
yeah.
awesome. Well, do you have any last words that you want to share with people as you're sharing your story with us?
I just think the wizarding school is really, it's the value of it was amazing to me when I first started it, and I realized how much we could get out of this, and especially like those office hours, having the ability to have feedback from you on our work regularly. I think it's a great value and definitely worth it. I'm very glad that I chose to enroll and to do it.
Well, it was a pleasure working with you. I'll just wrap up by saying congrats again with all that you've done with your composing. It's again been really cool to see your growth and to see what you've been doing with it. I look forward to hearing that piece that you're doing for Valdosta State and what else you're going to make after that.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well.